Mindset is not everything when it comes to changing your self-concept. Let's dive into why just changing your state of mind hasn't actually transformed your self-concept and what you need to do instead. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena. I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I help you to bridge the gap between who you currently are or perceive yourself as and who you desire to be or become. So a lot of identity and self-concept work is very much focused on the mind, changing your mindset, your attitudes, your thoughts about yourself and what you're capable of. But there's a lot more that goes into changing your self-concept than just changing your state of mind. And it's really important to talk about this because if you neglect different parts of your identity, then the change that you have in your being doesn't fully integrate. And that's when you may go back and forth and you feel like you're making progress and then you're going straight back into the old pattern. And so we want a really comprehensive, complete transformation of how you see yourself and how you show up in the world so that the changes can actually last and be sustainable. But before I even talk about why mindset is not everything and what you can do instead, let's talk about how changing your mindset is also beneficial because it is a powerful tool. For example, when you want to transform your self-concept, you first need an idea of what that version of you is like that you want to step into, that you want to become. And that happens with your mind. That's how you get the idea. It starts with your imagination. If you don't first have a vision, if you don't first have clarity in your mind of what the version of you that you want to be is like, who that version of you is, what the vision is that you want to step into, then you're gonna have a really hard time actually becoming that and actually implementing that. It's going to be vague. If you have a vague intention, you're going to get vague results. Now, when it comes to using your imagination, that might look different for different people. And for some people, it might be very mind-based. Some people are very analytical in the way they imagine. Some people are very visual and creative. Other people are more going into it from a place of feeling. Neither is wrong, neither is better than the other. It's just different approaches, and you will likely have one or two that just feel more natural to you. And it's important to play to your strengths. And the world that we live in today is very mental, meaning it's very rational, it's very intellectual and analytical, which kind of automatically means that a lot of people have the mind and have the thought as a strength. So if that is your strength, maybe that is what comes easiest to you. And then you don't want to deny that. You don't want to neglect that. You want to use that power of it. But if you want a complete shift, a complete transformation in your self-concept, in your self-identity, which actually is how you get to see changes in your life in the first place, at least lasting changes. It's how you get to break persistent patterns. It's through who you are being. If you want this complete shift, then you cannot alienate other elements of self-concept work. For example, a lot of the clients that come to me have initially been leaning very much into the mindset work. That's either because they're more analytical in nature and they're often a bit disembodied. They haven't learned to be fully in their body. But it can also be because it's what they learned elsewhere. It's because maybe they learned you just need to change your thoughts, or you just need to say these affirmations or do these meditations, and that's what you need to do. And what we often find when we start working together is that they've completely neglected a different side of working on your self-concept. So maybe they didn't really know how to fully integrate different parts of their subconscious, different parts of their psyche. Maybe they haven't gotten their nervous system into a state of equilibrium. Maybe they're dysregulated, sometimes without even noticing it. But then you also have the flip side of that. Just a few days ago, I spoke to a client who had really prioritized her nervous system, but her mindset was completely not aligned with the version of her that she actually wanted to be. And so for her, it was actually important to focus on her attitude and her state of mind. So it's not the same for everyone. And if you want to recreate yourself, you need a comprehensive, intentional, progressive approach that includes all of the elements of transforming your self-concept to exactly the levels that it's required for you. And your mind is one of these elements. It's an incredibly powerful tool that you can use to intentionally change your perception of your circumstances, your reality, your desires, and yourself. And of course, all of that has a big impact on your identity. So it's important to look at, what are the automatic assumptions that I'm making? What are the meanings I assign? How do I talk to myself? Consciously and unconsciously, openly and when nobody's listening. How do I talk about the things I want? What do I actually think is possible for me? But that being said, what a lot of people do is they are too rigid with their mindset work. Honestly, the mindset piece, it's pretty straightforward. I kind of don't need to explain to you how to change your mindset because it's pretty straightforward what mindset you want to have. It's the embodiment of that version of yourself. It's the state of your nervous system. It's the emotional charges in your subconscious and in your nervous system that are much harder to implement, that are much harder to resolve. The mindset, it's pretty straightforward, which is why a lot of people focus really hard on that. But when you're too rigid with your mindset and you're neglecting all these other aspects, or maybe you're not neglecting them, but you're not giving them the attention they need, or you don't have the knowledge or the support or the right tools or process to actually tackle these other aspects, then it can get really rigid with your mindset and it can be almost harmful, because it creates this pressure inadvertently. When it comes to the beliefs that you have about yourself, you don't just change them by changing your mindset. Your beliefs are deeply ingrained within you. They have been developed over years, experience after experience. Your beliefs are a consequence of all of the experiences that you've made. And beliefs are much more easily influenced and changed through experience than through thought, which is another reason why just focusing on mindset work is actually restricting you a little bit, because you're not getting the felt experience of that belief. You're not embodying that belief if you're only focusing on your mindset. And if you try to change your thoughts and your mindset, you'll quickly notice or feel like you're lying to yourself, because there are always parts of yourself that don't actually believe this. Changing your mindset and changing your attitude also doesn't mean that you just need to think positively. We don't want to get into the realm of toxic positivity or spiritual bypassing here. After all, and you'll always be, at least in this lifetime, a human being with complex human emotions and states and thought processes. Attempting to only think positively is pretty much impossible, and it would also burn you out. It's very exhausting, and it goes against parts of yourself that doesn't feel authentic to. It's a good intention to say, I'm gonna think positively, I'm gonna change my mindset, and to then accidentally bypass things and create massive amounts of resistance as a consequence of that. And resistance is definitely not how you change your self-concept. The mindset element of transforming your self-concept on its own, it's less about toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing. It's a lot more about your interpretation of certain circumstances and your attitude towards them, and where you see the silver linings and how open you are to opportunities, how persistent and how committed you are. It's not about changing thoughts or affirming yourself into oblivion. You don't have to do that. And you also don't have to reject or flip your thoughts. Very draining, very exhausting approaches. And ultimately, they are not sustainable, and they're also surface level. They don't actually give you the changes that you seek because it doesn't land within you. It requires constant mind management. It's like you could do different mini courses, or you could go deep from the beginning, and you're gonna get very different results if you go deep from the beginning. It requires more work and more commitment, but you're gonna get a lot more long-lasting and results that are in deeper resonance, where you get changes that are at a deeper level in your psyche. The amount of times I speak to people who, after 9 months, are still pretty much in the same place, although they've done these different courses and classes and these different things, or they've been following these techniques, or They've been trying to be consistent with whatever tools they've been using, but the patterns are still showing up. They're still in that same identity. They're still holding on to these parts of themselves that are actually not necessarily serving them. They're still holding on to these resistances or these attachments because they haven't gone deep enough from the beginning. So you can see changes and progress through changing your mindset, but how long lasting they are and how deep they actually go, that's a whole other story. Changing your concept is a really deep transformation at the end of the day, and it's a lot more than just changing your conscious surface level thought patterns that you notice. It requires depth, and it requires the entirety of your experience. It requires you to be with your present, to be clear on your future, and to also look back at the past. Whilst your mind is powerful and it can really make or break what's possible for you, it's also important to remember that your mind and your imagination are fairly limited. There are things that you might desire in your heart that you can't even picture, that you're not even aware of. There are possibilities out there for you that you don't even know exist yet. And whilst your beliefs and your assumptions really, it shapes the way you feel about yourself and it shapes the reality you get to experience, but it's clearly not as simple as just assuming something or just believing something else. If it was, we would all choose to do that and that would be it. And there would be no back and forth and there would be no struggle. It's not that easy. Because beliefs are shaped over time and through experience, if you only use conscious thought to change them, you will eventually just hit a wall. So I want to talk about some of the other elements that need to be tackled if you want a comprehensive shift in your self-concept. Comprehensive and sustainable. But before I do that, I would like to invite you to check out the link in the description box below, because I have a free blueprint for you. It's my free self-concept mastery blueprint. You get a really great introduction to self-concept and identity work in there. You get my 4-pillar framework for transforming your self-concept in an efficient and sustainable way. And you also get a daily checklist where you get to keep track of who you're becoming and actually take some tangible action steps towards being that version of yourself. And it includes some of the things that I'm talking about in this video. Starting with your emotions. Given that beliefs are shaped over time, you cannot neglect the past on your journey towards changing your self-concept. Even if it's a version of you that you want to move on from, even if it's something that you want to leave behind, it needs to be addressed. We need to get really familiar with every aspect of yourself in order to create change. And you can't change what you don't know. When you don't address the past, you often keep unconsciously, without wanting to, recreating and re-experiencing it because it's in your subconscious. And it doesn't matter how much work you put into your mindset or your thoughts. And when you keep recreating your past, you naturally keep blocking yourself from creating and experiencing a different future. So the past, along with the beliefs and attitudes and identities that come with that, needs to be dealt with, not shoved down. What does this have to do with emotions? You have to go into the traumatic imprints in your body. Your body is holding on to trauma. Your nervous system is holding on to emotions. There's a reason you keep ending up in certain states or in certain reactions that keep repeating, and certain patterns that keep repeating. It's these emotional charges, these experiences, sometimes this pain, that actually dictates a lot of your beliefs. And also ultimately your reactions, and then also your self-concept. And if you want your self-concept, your new self-concept, to be a complete evolution, a complete transformation, not a state that you tap in and out of, or a feeling or a mindset that you temporarily have, you also need something else. And that's integration and embodiment. That means you need to become a different version of yourself. Becoming means embodying. And by very definition, as the name says, embodying includes the body. For example, if you bypass everything under the guise of spirituality, but you're not embodying it, it just remains an idea in your imagination. If you change your attitude and your mindset towards things, but this is where it stays, any emotional charges, any traumatic imprints that are in your body, in your nervous system, any anxiousness or nervousness or insecurity that you carry with you, that's gonna take over. no matter what your mindset is like. Because you can tell yourself things, and if your body's saying something else, it's really hard to fight against that. You have to incorporate the body because the body remembers the past better than the mind. The mind can trick you, and sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a protective mechanism that you maybe don't remember certain things or you remember them differently. It can be good that this is happening, but if the body still remembers, then there's still a part of you that's holding on and attaching to an identity that you've actually been wanting to outgrow. The body remembers, the body doesn't forget, and so it needs to be included so that you can embody something new or something a little more evolved. It might not be completely new. And then we also have the subconscious. There's a lot of talk about reprogramming the subconscious, but there's also surface level approaches to that. A lot of people think they're reprogramming their subconscious, but they're just listening to affirmation tapes at night or doing hypnosis. And none of these things are wrong, but that's not how anything rewires, because your subconscious also lives in the body. It's not just the mind. And mindset shifts, as important and as powerful as they are, they mostly happen on a conscious level. You've probably experienced this, that you consciously know something to be true, or you think that something is true, or you want it to be true, but that doesn't mean that your subconscious is accepting it. I often hear this from clients when they say, I know that I am worthy. I do know it, and I tell myself and I know it, but there's some part of me that doubts. There's some part of me that doesn't feel it, and there's a difference. You can know something to be true, it doesn't mean that you feel it to be true. Consciously knowing and really feeling it deeply in your being, very different experience. If you only rely on your mindset without doing the work to get to the root of your subconscious, to really integrate and embody changes, dismantle, integrate and embody changes in a sustainable way, you're missing out. You're likely hitting a wall. You likely go back and forth. And no wonder so many people burn out whilst trying to change their self-concept. And it feels like so much effort. I mean, it's work, but it shouldn't be exhausting. It shouldn't burn you out. And it definitely shouldn't get you trapped in an endless cycle of trying to heal or fix something. There's nothing to fix. You're not broken. It's super important to keep your mind in check. Just don't leave it there. Don't get stuck there. But what do you think? Do you think mindset is everything? Do you think it's not everything? Why? Why not? And normally I share at this stage what next week's video is going to be about. But this week I'm leaving it a bit ambiguous. But I basically have a little update for you. I'm making a change. I've already been making a change to the content of this channel. Stay tuned for that. I'll see you next week, and I hope you have a wonderful one.